All right, guys, so the goal of this video is to talk about coaching, to kind of crack the ice with that a little bit, because I have reshot these kinds of videos over and over again, and wow, the sun is really blasting me. Anyway, this is for the coaches, this is for the jiu-jitsu guys, for the people who watch me who are also coaches in other sports, okay? This isn't just for jiu-jitsu or grappling or anything like that, but it does really heavily apply to that. You can take what I'm going to talk about and apply it to any of your practices. I'm going to try to keep it away from inundated science terms, and I'm going to try to keep it kind of off the cuff. I did prepare a little bit of an outline here to keep me on some task, and I do have a few things I want to cover. But anyway, let's get right into it. I will start with my mission statement. My job is to be a coach, so I'm not an instructor. I'm not someone who's going to tell you exactly all the things that I think you need to do. You know, I'm not going to be prescriptive in my approach anymore. Kind of had a long run of that and experiment with that style for a long time, so it's time for me to try something new. I've been trying something new now for about 9 months, so we're in our 9th month. It's been successful. It's opened opportunities for me. It's kind of made me some great students, like the guys who train under me who do this stuff. You know, they're historically way better at this point than I've ever seen over my 9 years of training. This year, guys got exceptionally good pretty quick, and it wasn't just an athleticism thing. There's a lot to it. So my mission statement is to design and provide environments that are opportunities for exploration. So people putting them in these perception motor landscapes so that they can pick up problems that are coming up and become adaptable problem solvers, so they don't rely on someone else for every answer to every unique problem. And the way I understand things, it kind of helps me to create these environments along as we go along in the night, you know. So I start my class, we start pretty general, I watch the room, and then depending on what I'm seeing, it gives me ideas for what problems are arising, some behaviors that I want to encourage, or some new movement solutions that I want them to explore. But there really is no one single way, even in any sport, to do something. Even if it's swinging a golf club, there's some invariance to the swings, right? But for the most part, if they track them, if they look at the swings, you know, there's studies that are kind of supporting what I'm saying. They'll analyze people swinging golf clubs, and they'll see on a graph that there is a lot of variability in every swing. It's really the effect that they're trying to get. They're trying to hit that ball the right way. A really simple way of understanding it is, if I throw a ball at you, there are just so many different ways you might catch that, so many different ways your fingers will organize around grabbing that ball. There's so many ways that can go. You can move out of the way and dodge the ball. You can get hit with the ball because your perception wasn't quick enough, or you didn't notice it coming. You can catch the ball with 1 hand, 2 hands, 3 fingers, all different little tiny ways that's going to vary. You're going to catch it here, you're going to catch it there, you're going to catch it here. That's what I mean by variability in solutions, right? So to tie this back into my mission statement, I want people to develop intrinsic knowledge, so they don't have to recall some right or wrong answer to a thing. Instead, they get to have interacted with the effect that they're looking to make in that environment. So if it's taking people down, I'm putting you in the situation in all the different states of standing engagements, and we're going to train those standing engagements, whether it's 2-on-1s, all the different ways we interact and control human bodies and put them on the ground. That's for grappling. And if you take your sport and chop it up, like if it's soccer, one of the easiest things you could do is restrict the size of the field that people are playing in, force people to engage with the person with the ball, force people to try to push that ball, so that they don't just have the luxury of playing soccer but not having a lot of meaningful touches with the ball, okay? There's plenty of stuff coming out like this right now, so you know, I might be repeating some other things that you'll hear in the communities, and it's only because I've engaged with the community a lot to try to learn some more about what I'm doing. So I previously thought I was a crazy expert, and I had like this deep knowledge and unique, you know, approach to how I use the prescriptive approach, and maybe just what I thought was good. I used to have a whole matrix web thing. I had to study every little answer to every single problem and write it all down and try to recall and remember all these systems. And as fun as that is, it's a little inundating, and it kind of isn't really what's happening when I'm actually training. I know I have advantages in certain areas. I seek affordances, and that's kind of how it goes for me when I'm actually training. So my understanding of how people are interacting with the information that's abundant in the environment. In fact, there's so much information in the environment that I have to get rid of a lot of it so that they can just experience slivers of it, so that it's not too much and inundating, right? And we can widen that and narrow that. So I can make a really narrow game where these people are playing a game, and the only thing objective, player A has to do an objective, player B has to do an objective, and there are different subtypes of games that we can create off of that. So for any sport, you can do this. In golf, right? You can only allow them to hit face as far as they can to the right, right? You could say, okay, hit this ball, but I want you to swing in such a way that it goes really far to the right, right? Then you have them do it to the left, and they're essentially calibrating by forcing them into certain behaviors and areas. So the three things I did this year to get a better understanding, because this is a really vast thing, right? There's the language of coaching, there's the organisms in the actual environments organizing around whatever the problems are that are coming up. And you also have like kind of motor skill acquisition. You have all these different class activities that you can try, and you have a lot of research that you can delve into. And some of it is useful. Some of it is like, I don't know what to do with it. I ended up kind of backing the ecological approach to training, ecodynamics, looking at the systems as complex and non-deterministic, right? So I can't predict, even if I'm some crazy expert and it's very likely that something's going to happen, I can't actually predict that it's going to happen, and I can't really abstract exactly how that's going to happen, bit by bit. Sometimes when I'm watching jiu-jitsu, I know what's going to happen next. I could tell the person while they're doing it, I could say he's going to, X, Y, or Z right now, or he's going to do this, and then they go for it, but then it might not be exactly what I'm saying. And sometimes you can tell the system becomes a little bit less non-deterministic or a little bit more non-deterministic. It depends on how close people are. This is specifically for grappling. I think in sports with teams, it's even more complex because you have all these different individual actors in a bigger field, right, with a lot more physics going on between all of them. But maybe I'm completely wrong about that. It's just an impression because I don't understand team sports like how I understand a 1 versus 1 kind of thing. So for coaches, just to ask you a question, if you could design like 1 or 2 games for your sport that solve a problem in the sport, that let people kind of experiment with a critical skill or behavior that they're needed for that sport, try to think of 2 games that you might have someone come up with. What I mean games is, slivering down and cutting up what you guys are doing into smaller things. So like for baseball, guys will, just hit balls over and over again. Some guys do it with the machine that shoots at them, and those are programmed to have variability, which is cool. But, you could do it with that. You could think about all the options you have. You could hit off a tee, which obviously doesn't have a lot of variability, so I don't know if it translates that great for the actual thing. I think you want to see someone throwing a ball at you, and you want to practice reading what they're doing with their body while they're throwing it, those tiny things that we read, and then you want to practice hitting a live ball. So the focus is a live environment, but you got to keep it safe. So that's the tough spot. Like for jiu-jitsu, if you go like completely live with no constraints, there's just so much information that people tend to just grab onto the things that they're familiar with already, the behaviors they're familiar. I already see this, right, with my higher level guys that have been training a long time, but they never were put into a constraints-led approach kind of game. And they seem almost like it takes them a while to start becoming problem solvers because they're relying on their previous already rehearsed kind of thing that they're trying to pick up in their head. I see it all the time when I put them in a spot. They might be purple belts everywhere else or high-level guys everywhere else, but when we put them in a specific game, they get washed over and over again, or they just have a really hard time in certain slices of the live environment. So that's really what it is. It's kind of setting challenge points for the different levels of guys that you have, or girls, that you have in your sport. So there's ways to use the constrained learning approach, and there's a lot to that. I don't really want to go into that too much right now, but the 3 things I did this year to up my coaching that I think anyone else can really do is, first thing, learn about motor learning, learn about memory, short-term memory. So how much can you inundate somebody with prescribed, like, do this, then this, then this. And, you know, just as simply understanding that, like, I think it's 5 plus or minus 2 or 3 pieces of information people can remember before they just start forgetting, you know, a lot of it. So how many details, how much are you trying to push? How can you be more effective in your delivery as a coach to guide these people so that they can learn intrinsically and become experts in the field that on their own? So they don't need to look to you for all the answers. They look to you to give them problems, kind of like a class. Like, they'll teach you how to do a problem, and then they'll give you problems so that you can start figuring them out. And all the smart kids, they can figure out any problem. And then the guys like me would have to look over at their desk and copy them. So the smart kids are becoming good problem solvers because they're doing the work and doing the problems. And the lazy guys are looking at them, solving the problems and copying them. But when the guy's not there anymore to copy them, they don't know how to solve the problems, so they fail the tests, okay? I'm just joking. I was very smart, so smart actually. The greatest student who never cheated on anything, and I'm sure all of you guys never did either. But anyway, second thing I did, learn about effective practice activities. So for me, the practice activities involved, okay, I need something new, something that keeps a live environment but keeps it safe, that controls the amount of information I'm dumping on these people and kind of restricts it. So you could go super restricted down, and you can also widen the game and give them more to play with. Depends on what you're trying to do with them. So I actually tend to just adjust that as we go. Sometimes I'll hit a little block of a couple games where it gets wider and wider. Then I'll narrow it down and we'll do a different topic, subject area, and then I'll widen it again, even all the way to the point where we get to like a positional sparring or live rolling from a position. And we can reel it back in and go back to constraint and just keep mixing it up for them. I find that keeping it fresh is something that I like to do as a coach. And get time. The third thing is just getting time in the coaching environment. So if you're really into it, but you don't get to do it a lot, I mean, you being in the environment is just as important as providing environments for other people. So for me, in my case, I work full time. I have a lot of obligations to other things, but I have a class that I run Wednesday night. I have a class that I run Sunday morning, and I started running a free class 9 months ago, and I've only missed 2 because of other obligations. So I've been there every Sunday morning, waking up, going down, running a free class. Whoever shows up, 10 guys, 1 guy, 2 guys, 10 guys, I don't care. I always am doing that. And then any other opportunities I get to coach, whether it's a different school, wherever, on any mat, anywhere, I'm taking that opportunity and I'm getting these hours racked up, okay? Because you need to be inhabiting that environment. And while I'm there, I'm also experimenting, okay? I'm willing to be wrong. That's a big deal. Like, if you just like, I am the expert, I know everything, I can't be wrong, I always feel like I'm wrong. I'm like always trying to say, okay, maybe I'm wrong, let me try this a little bit more. I have to solve problems as we're going. So there's fear that because we're going live that people will get hurt more. So I solved that problem. I started pairing in 3s. I started changing, my delivery. I started explaining that I want the people to play the games and explore, with exploration at the heart of everything, and not play the games to win the games just for like, oh, I won, I beat this guy in the game over and over again. And then I have to explain to people, if you fail what feels like 70 or 80% of the time, that's great. You should be failing a lot. there's no expert out there that should not be failing some of the games, okay? You have to be failing because that means you're exploring and you're trying something new and it doesn't work. And then you learn, okay, I tried that, it didn't work, but then I tried that again, for some reason it did work. And all of this factors into your experience, and it alters your perception as you're interacting with what's going on in front of you, okay? Experimentation with your class, willing to try new practice activities. You don't have to dive into some new thing. You really don't. You could stick to what you're doing, you know, and in time your guys will get better by happenstance, because there's tons of history of using any approach and people getting good after X amount of time. But there's ways to do it faster, and I've seen that. I'm seeing it now. I'm seeing, like, it's very subjective, but when outsiders come in or guys come in that haven't been with these people yet, or they leave and they come back, and then these guys that was sticking around, they're only doing like 1 or 2 classes of like fully live CLA stuff a week, right? And within a year, they're all very well-rounded grapplers who are just a pain to deal with. They're a pain. There's obviously still a lot of time that I need to have with them, but within a year, I'm very impressed with their results. And other people know that too. I have purple belts come down from other schools and they roll with the guys and they're like, don't know that these are 1-stripe white belts, which for you guys who don't train, that's a very low belt. That's like the lowest you could get is just a white belt, and then a white belt with 1 stripes. Eventually you get 2, 3, 4 stripes, then you get a blue belt. Usually takes 2 years. I think these guys are becoming blue belts within a year, at least. They're so close to it already, but with more time, and if I had them more times a week, they would definitely be up there really fast, because it accrues a lot of time in that problem-solving space, and these guys they have intentions behind every single spot that they're in, so they are moving intentionally. They're not like rehearsing a move, although we can still do that. There's no absolutes, right? So you should blend practice activities. There's debate among my community about whether or not we should do drilling in the dead environment at all, or a little bit, or a lot of bit, and I know where I stand with that, and a lot of coaches already know where they stand with that, but I do experiment sometimes with bringing more dead drilling. Depends on the room I'm in, right? So I teach at another school where they're used to doing a lot of dead technique, right? They're used to just trying techniques out. And so when I walk in and I start blasting them with, you know, a whole live class, that they might not feel like they're learning stuff, and how your students feel is just as important. If you give them a ooh, ah moment, you know, the technique stuff tends to give them more of that, ooh, ah, I learned something today, okay? He forced me to explore a space. And really, if you zoom in on that, it's just a very, very, very constrained game, right? Where there's no resistance, it's constraining away the other side of the game. The cool thing about the live games that we're doing is you're learning on both sides, okay? So there's not like a dead time for any one guy in the room or any one participant. They're both learning, right? So if it was basketball, I don't know exactly how I would do it, but imagine I need to practice driving to the hoop for layups, and I have one defender in a specific spot, and the defender has to start there, and he can do anything he wants to stop me from getting that layup, okay? Then we add another defender, or then we add another guy, and then we can just build upon that game and make it bigger, right? So the guy who's driving to the hoop has to get meaningful touches in going for it, right? I don't even play the sport, but that's a game that I would probably make for that specific task, okay? And then you can change it and manipulate it whatever you want. You can add a guy, you can add defenders, attackers, you can have them pass, you can make them pass, like they have to pass the ball, and then that guy has to put it in. Whatever it is, you can force it with, you can use constraints to keep people in exploration. So I forget exactly what it is, but there were artists who they did an experiment where they put kids in a park, and the park had no fence. And the park with no fence, no constraints, the kids all kind of stayed together in where they were comfortable. They kind of didn't branch out and go explore all parts of the park. They stayed where they felt safe. And then the park with the fence, the kids branched out and went all corners of the park, all up into the fence, all corners of the park, away from each other, exploring, because they feel safe by the fence. Now this is like a metaphor, but I see that metaphor as as a truth that's kind of evident in my experience now, in what I've talked to a lot of coaches about, being transparent with my approach. I've live streamed my classes. I've debated and debated and debated. I think I got past the hardest part, which there is a tough part. The willingness to be wrong kind of is tough, because we talk about having no ego, but like the more you learn about a topic, the more egotistical you might become. And like I thought I was like this like really big shot, smart, friggin', I know every technique kind of guy. And then I realized that it wasn't about that. It was about, what do I even know about people learning anything? And then this applies to like teaching anybody anything, just letting them get that experience. Like if I show you how to cut an onion, but I just do it a specific way, and I stand there and make sure you do it like my way, but I could show you it a bunch of times, and then I start letting you cut onions. And by the 100th onion, you're like a pro at cutting onions, because you've experienced it, you've figured it out. I could give you a tip here and there and direct your attention to certain things, but generally speaking, you'll learn how to do it really nice on your own, okay? In the environment with someone guiding your attention, right? It's not just like, oh, don't get misconception where it's like, oh, they don't learn anything, they got to learn it all on themselves, on their own. No, actually, it's very involved. It's harder than just showing some technique, which is what I used to do. You would just show technique for X amount of time, 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then you let them go and roll live. So it's like super constrained, where there's no representation of the live environment, and then not constrained at all, where there's just a live environment, just go crazy, do whatever you want, survive, good luck. Instead, now we do a full hour of like different parts of the game that we're playing in my sport. So take what you will from that. There's a lot to be dug into. There's a lot to be educated on, for sure. I mean, even though I learned some things, I got to still go back and review them, right? I can't just regurgitate science, because I'm not that smart with that stuff. I really am not. I have a very basic understanding of how I think people learn the best, and I'm trying to apply that to my coaching. So I do have a little excerpt here from this book, and I do have a recommendation. Everything I'm talking about is touched upon in this book, How We Learn to Move by Rob Gray, okay? I heard about this book through Greg Souders, talked about it because he talks to Rob Gray in some podcasts. Those are good podcasts to listen to, but it gets sciencey. It helps if you have an understanding of some of it, and a lot of it you don't really need to know. You really don't. You don't need to know that much, to be honest. You need just like a base understanding, if you really even care, okay? It's extra stuff. Once you get that base kind of, I call it the eco lens or whatever it is, the perceiving reality part of what you're seeing people as they're learning, you form kind of like a worldview on what you're looking at in the live environment of coaching, and you're looking at people learning. So in this book, I need a little bit of water. Let's get a little sip. Oh yeah. All right. Newell's Constraints Model of Coordination. What if I told you that one of the single most influential publications in sports coaching today is not about sports or coaching at all? It is a book chapter about motor development in children. In 1986, Carl Newell was trying to put forth a different view to the traditional thinking about how kids develop motor skills. Specifically, he sought to counter the dominant idea at the time that our genes carry prescriptions for actions that emerge at different times or critical periods. Newell argued that our movements were not prescribed by anything. There is no CEO in our head. Instead, as we grow and develop, movements emerge as results of a self-organization process that is bound by the ever-changing constraints imposed upon us. So, there is that magic word, constraint. What exactly does it mean? So this little excerpt, I think, is kind of at the heart of what my belief system is and how I think people learn. And I really care about it. And I think that if you care about it too, this is an excellent book to add to your arsenal. Whether you agree with it, disagree with it, understand it, apply it, don't apply it, it definitely offers an alternative way of thinking about what is going on, how perception and action interact constantly. So you're constantly perceiving and constantly acting. And it's almost simultaneous, hard to separate the two. There's no like part where they're separated. So knowing this is what we're dealing with people, like if I was a zookeeper, I might learn about the animals a little bit. How do these animals learn? How can I get these animals, trained? How can I help them get better in their environment? It's all about that self-organization process and being a coach, right? Coaching, designing, leading their attention, and giving them intentions in every situation. So hopefully I got something across important to you guys. I want to go a little bit deeper on like how to make games, but generally speaking, I think I covered that pretty well. Just take a problem, a skill, an area that is needed in your game, whatever it is that you're playing, whether it's a team sport or not. And I want you to try it. Try make one game for your class, okay? That could go really well. I mean, what happens when you do this is also people start having fun, right? I'm not inundating them with information like, oh, remember this, now remember this, now remember this. Go try it a couple times, okay? And then they're trying to remember what you just showed them. They're trying to do it, and then you got to troubleshoot and fix them and make sure they're doing it right, and wrong. There's a right and wrong now. They feel like they don't get it. They get frustrated because maybe you're throwing something that's too much at them or too little at them. Meanwhile, in the live environments, these people are having fun. They're getting moving. They're doing the thing they came to do. Conditioning's built in because now they're live. They're going way more on the conditioning, and it's fun. So your retention goes up like crazy. So people are coming back for more. They love it. They think it's special. And what's better than having fun while you're learning? And it's not like it's easy. It's a little bit physically harder, but it's easy on your mind because all you have to do is now get into that flow state and start interacting with what's going on. Okay, so it's very exciting stuff. It is. It should be a positive thing. There's no wrong way, right? But there are better ways to learn how to be more effective as a coach. And figuring out whether you want to be an instructor, a coach, a professor, or any of that stuff, I prefer just being a coach because I think that's the most effective way of making very, very good problem solvers and independent students. I want to make people self-reliant. They don't need me, but having me is a big, big plus for them, right? They don't need you for the information, but you will provide them experiences that will lead them to achieving solutions and becoming experts with intrinsic knowledge in that field. All right. Thanks for listening to the ramble. I hope any of that made sense to you guys. And I'm very excited for more jiu-jitsu content and coaching content. Peace.